Routers are one of, if not the most, versatile powered woodworking tools out there. There are so many uses for them, and to match up with that, there is many variations of routers ranging in size, motor power, base plates and more. There really isn't a single router that's perfect for every task. A little trim router is great for edge work but lacks the power or capability needed for larger bits. The reverse is true too. A 6 kilo monster router is tricky to balance on edges. We've been looking around for a large above table router, but we weren't particularly sure which model or even which brand to go with. We reached out to Bosch and they sent along their only professional full-size router that's available in Australia. To be clear, Bosch provided this router for review and that's it. This isn't a paid review. I'm not even sure if the router is to be sent back, so I'm hesitant to buy any of the accessories for it. It features a 1600 watt motor with constant electronic power management, variable speed from 10,000 to 25,000 RPM, a whopping 76mm plunge, 6-step turret stop, plunge depth stop rod with fine adjustment, spring-loaded collet lock for 1 spanner adjustment, dual LEDs to illuminate the workpiece, and it weighs in at about 5.8 kilos. So what do you get for the $400 to $500 that this router costs? Well, you get your 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch collet, despite Bosch Australia's website actually saying it's 3/8, so it's not, it's a standard 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch, a 24mm wrench, a dust shroud, a toolless guide bushing adapter, 17mm guide bush for that, the large L box, and some retailers state it comes with a parallel edge guide and others don't, so be sure to check on that. One common issue with all low-end tools is seemingly no thought gone into the ergonomics. Oh, right off the bat, Bosch is signalling that this isn't a low-end tool by having the most comfortable rubber over-molded handles I've ever felt on probably any power tool. While in operation, little to no vibration seems to be transferred through the handles and everything adjusts fairly easily. The power trigger is in a great spot, though it can be tiring if you don't engage the power lock. One bit of reinventing the wheel that took me by surprise is that the router doesn't have a plunge lock. Instead, it has a lock release. While that sounds a little bit like semantics, in actual use it is amazing. Instead of plunging then twisting to lock as far as you can, the router is always locked at whatever height. Flick the switch, goes down, locks. As far as I can tell, nobody else does it this way, and I can't figure out why. This just feels more natural and is much easier to use. Dust collection is above average, though a slightly higher plastic deflector would easily change that to great. It takes standard 36mm outside diameter hoses, and it's got a fairly long port, so it has a really good friction fit that stays well, unlike on the track saw, but more on that another time. However, it is a shame to see that there wasn't an under router edge dust shroud to catch chips when routing a profile on the edge of a board, such as a roundover. Though I think the optional RA1175 is that part, and no surprises, it's not available in Australia. The micro adjuster lets you adjust the depth 1.5mm per full rotation after you've already released the plunge switch. So plunge down and adjust. It's not a full range adjuster, so you can't go from no plunge at all to all the way to the base, but it'll give you 16mm, so that's a fairly decent range for most purposes. Of the numerous routers I've used, this is so far the best turret stop I've used. 6 steps with 2 of those adjustable and really positive clicking in between each stop. Many, like Trident, have only adjustable stops, and I find those have a bit too much play in them and can vibrate up and down a millimetre or two. The depth stop isn't spring-loaded, it is a solid rod and it's square. Perhaps it's a personal preference, but all 3 of these things are what I prefer. Hollow rods can get caught on the depth stops, round rods seem to wiggle more. Now, Bosch meant to send along the micro-adjustable edge guide thing, but unfortunately the marketing department were out of stock. However, good news is it's a fairly standard 2-rod system, so whether Bosch's fence is good or bad, you could always use an aftermarket solution. There are very few tools that stand alone in their own category, so looking at just the Bosch router isn't of much use. We need to know what it's up against. I will look at 2 specific routers in a bit more depth though, the Trident MOF 001 and the Festool OF 1400. In Australia, Trident particularly, their routers have quite the following, and the closest in specs to this is the MOF 001, a 1400 watt machine which matches many of the specs. Both are classed as usable by hand rather than just being table-bound routers. Both have micro adjustments, variable speed, and full-wave electronics to keep the constant speed and soft start motor. Now MOF is much cheaper, coming at about $340 to $350. It's lighter at 4.7 compared to the relatively heavy 5.8 kilos of this router. But this is where the Triton router starts to fall over. While the 59mm plunge depth is good, it's blown away by the 76mm travel of the GOF 1600. While the Bosch weighs a little over a kilo more, the ergonomics on the Triton routers with the very high and uncomfortable handles make them seem like very crude tools, so that weight advantage is lost. The king of the hill in this class would undoubtedly be the Festool OF 1400, coming in at over $1,000 Australian dollars. But for a little over double the price, what do you get extra over the Bosch? Well, it has the same two collets, the 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch, a similar micro adjustable guide, a 30mm copy ring, and it comes in a Sys4 size sustainer. The only real difference in the included bits and pieces in the OF 1400 is it includes a chip deflector for edge forming, but otherwise they're like for like, very comparable. The Festool has a lower wattage motor, 6mm less plunge, though the ratcheting collet is much better designed than the simple lock on this. One clear advantage Festool has is the availability of the accessories, and I'll get to this more in a moment, available in Australia. Though given Festool's pricing, having to import Bosch parts probably works out much the same. If you're already in the Festool system with their power connectors, dust hoses, sustainers and all of that, the OF 1400 is probably the right tool for you regardless of what other brand router you look at. However, the Bosch punches a fair bit above its weight. Alright, so on to the bad. Now, while it is great that it has really quick toolless motor change, that doesn't mean anything if you don't have anything to change it into. The fixed-based attachment is just simply not available in Australia. Alright, so that's not the end of the world. We'll put it straight into a router lift and use it that way. It's got a nice barrel, right? Well, not without some effort. The only way you can turn these motors on is when it's in one of the bases, because that's where the switches are rather than on the body. Now this is for safety and ergonomics, and there are ways around it. You can buy the replacement parts and fashion your own switch, but it's not ideal. While the guide bushing system does seem to work, and it is indeed pretty quick to change over, having a proprietary guide bushing system is a little bit frustrating. While technically other guide bushings for the system exist, none of these can be found in Australian stores, and overseas they're pretty expensive. I could find quite a few of these from the UK for $31 each. Now there is a adapter so that you can use the standard porter cable threaded brass bushings. That's the RA1100. But again, it's not available in Australia. It's much cheaper to get a third-party sub-base system like this Milescraft turn lock base, which is about $30 and includes a bunch of bushings, and an adapter to use the porter cable style bushings. While the second half of this review turned a little dark, it isn't all doom and gloom for the GOF 1600 CE. As I opened with, I don't think there is a perfect router for all situations, but despite the issues Bosch Australia have brought upon themselves, the 1600 CE gets pretty close to that mark. The ergonomics, the ample power, the accuracy, the fine adjustment make it a joy to use. There are workarounds with the guide bushing issue, and while it's not the cheapest router, it's by far not the most expensive, while providing a pretty damn near close experience to that most expensive one. This router is a great handheld router, but unless Bosch Australia sort out the in-table use, it's not the only router you'll need at the end of the day. However, between you and me, I'm kind of hoping that Bosch doesn't ask for it back, because I've genuinely enjoyed using this compared to the other routers I've used in the past.